Hey fellow disc golfers, Jason here with the Fairway Bandits, bringing you with what I hope will be a helpful video on conquering the most difficult, at least in my belief, part of disc golf. Now I think we can all agree that there are a lot of components that go into putting together a good disc golf round.
Oh, yeah.
There's accuracy and distance with your drives, there's a good scramble game, soft, gentle approach shots. But there's that one key component that can make you or break you. That's right. It all comes down to the putt. So what I did was put together a few putting games that I guarantee will take your disc golf game to the next level. Let's check them out. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the first of 5 putting games I'd like to share with you today. The first one I call the Old Standard. This is your traditional style putting practice. You'll need some putters for this. Ideally, the more the merrier. That way you're not having to walk back and forth to the target, so you're putting more than you're walking. Some cones, marker discs, rocks, sticks, something to mark strategic places away from the target, and then a stool or something to hold those multiple putters so you're not hanging onto a stack while you're putting. The object of this game is to build muscle memory through repetition at select distances from the target. So you're going to set your markers up at, for example, 15, 20, 25, and 30 feet. And you're going to putt repeatedly at each one of those places until you're consistently hitting from that distance and then move further on. Let's talk pros and cons to the Old Standard. Obviously very beginner friendly. There's not a lot of setup or score tracking, things like that to do. It doesn't take a lot of time, and the repetitions are awesome for muscle memory. As far as cons go, if you don't have a lot of putters, you're probably going to spend more time walking than putting, and it can get a little boring without incentives or competition. On to game number 2. This is what I call the V2 Pro. This is just another variation of the Old Standard, so you're going to need all the same stuff. The setup is going to be the same. The difference in this one is we're going to add a little competition by fictitiously challenging your favorite pro. So you're going to set up your markers and you're going to putt from each one just like you would with the Old Standard, but when you make a putt, it's going to count as 1 point for you. When you miss one, 2 points for them. First 1 to 10 wins, and you must win by 2. Hitting the pros and cons of the V2 Pro, very similar to the Old Standard as far as that goes. Pros are going to be, it's very beginner friendly, set it up anywhere, it doesn't take a ton of time, repetitions are great. This one does bring in a little bit of competition, so it's a little bit more fun. As far as the cons go, don't have a lot of putters, again, you're going to be walking a lot. You could get beat, and you do have to track the score. But the beautiful thing is, when you hit 10 first and you do win, you can celebrate by shooting off some lasers. Game number 3 is what I call the 5-by putting round. This one's for those days that you need to do some putting practice, but you really want to play around. So the needs for this one's are going to be pretty easy. You're going to grab your bag or your cart and you're going to head to the course. And instead of just making your putt and moving on, you're going to have to hit 5 additional putts before moving on to your next hole. So you throw your drive, make your approach shot. If you hit your putt in that first attempt, you can choose your next 5 from wherever you want. If you miss that first putt attempt, you have to make 5 from that lie. Pros and cons to this particular game, obviously there's no setup, you got varying targets, you're breaking it up with drives and approaches, and you're actually simulating a little closer to an actual round. Cons, if there's other players on the course, you don't want to spend a lot of time at the basket throwing extra putts because you could get in their way. And if you do miss a putt from circle 2, it can take a while to hit 5 of them if it's a long distance putt. So it really makes you think about, do I want to lay up or do I want to try and hit this putt? All right, game number 4, just a simple game of horse. Essentially, you're just going to force your opponent to mimic your putts, and if they don't, they get a letter, and when they spell out horse, they lose. You're going to need 2 players for this one. You're going to flip to choose who throws first. When you make a lead putt, the other player must mimic that putt to avoid getting a letter. When you miss a lead putt, no penalty to that. The lead simply goes to the other player. Pros to the game of horse. Very fun due to the variety of putts and competition involved. It's pretty easy to play and doesn't take up a lot of time. The only con I would say would be that you do need 2 players to play it. And now the grand finale, by far my favorite and most dynamic game that I'm going to be sharing with you today. I call it the 357 Shootout. Now the game has absolutely nothing to do with the 357 handgun and everything to do with the numbers 3, 5, and 7. Now there's going to be a little bit more of a learning curve with this one, so bear with me as I break it down for you. Let's go ahead and take a look at what you're going to have for the 357 Shootout. You're going to need something to throw at, so a practice target would definitely be helpful. A couple of minis and then 2 putters. The idea in this game is to complete 3 rounds at each level by hitting both putts progressively from your starting lie to your finishing lie. And as you can see, I got the 3 levels written down here, and you can think of them as beginner, intermediate, and advanced, if you will. They've got increasing starting lies and also increasing finishing lies. Those starting lies remain the same throughout the level, all 3 rounds. It's the finishing lies that increase by 3, 5, or 7. Let's go ahead and break it down some more. Here's a verbal breakdown of how the game will play out. You're going to start in any direction away from the target and mark your starting lie. When making both of those putts, you'll continue in any direction, adding 1 additional pace away from the target. And if you happen to miss a putt, you'll have to subtract the same number of paces from your next lie as putts you missed in your previous one. So you'll take your mini and you'll mark the outside edge of that missed putt, the first one, and then place your other marker in direct line with it. Hopefully then you'll make your 2 putts and proceed as normal from there. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at it visually. So to keep this nice and simple, I'm just going to go over the first round of level 1. With a starting lie of 3 paces out. Got my 2 putters and my minis. Going to hit both of those putts and then proceed to 4 paces out and continue on from there. Now as you can see, I've picked a target that's got some obstacles off to the left. It's also a little bit of a drop off there. So if I get a bad kick or a roll from the target, my next putt could be a little bit tricky. That was 5 paces out, working my way out to 6 already, which is a finishing lie. I'm going to strategically miss my first putt and then make my second one. Fortunately, that landed in a good spot, unlike this other example, which could have put me behind that tree. So I'm going to take 5 paces out in line with that miss, 1 less from my previous. Hit both those putts. Now proceed as normal by adding 1 additional pace. Back out to my 6 paces, which is my finishing lie, and hit both of these putts to finish up round 1 of level 1. Let's take a look at some additional rules you want to consider while playing. Number 1, stay within the PDGA regulations in regard to Circle 1 putting. So any attempts made within that 33-foot circle, you must demonstrate full control of balance behind your marker disc before advancing to the target. Number 2, if your missed lie happens to land you in an unplayable or unsafe location, go ahead and take relief from that in the first safe place, indirect line away from the target. Regardless of what pace you're supposed to be at, or if it lands or rolls further away than what your paces were supposed to be, you need to make those putts from wherever it came to rest. And number 3, if you miss a putt from your original starting point, or you miss multiple putts that then take you below that starting point, you have to make 10 in a row from your starting lie before you can proceed. Otherwise, I guess you can just say game over. Let's quickly knock out a few alternatives to keep the game fresh for you. The first one being the most obvious, and that's just to choose a different target. The more difficult the target, the more difficult the game. So an open target is going to be a little bit easier to finish, and one with lots of obstacles, elevation change, or even a death putt can really change the dynamic of it. And number 2, you could go with a different number of putters. I went with 2 putters because it's what I usually carry. I think a lot of people carry 2 putters, so for convenience reasons, that's what I chose. And number 3, you could also play this with somebody else. So what you would do in the case of 2 players would be to flip to see who starts round 1. And then you can either alternate or flip again between rounds. And while you're playing, you'll just alternate each pace. First to finish wins the round. Best of 3 wins the game. Finishing up with the pros and cons on this one, man, it brings in a lot of dynamics of the other games, so the competition is high. Depending on your target, the environment you're in, the variety of putts is ever changing. Having to control your nerves and emotions, especially in some of those later rounds, simulates tournament play pretty good, so it makes it a very challenging game. Cons, I guess I would say just to be a little bit of a learning curve, and it can be a little time consuming. Well, there they are, the 5 putting games that I believe will help take your game to the next level as much as it has helped me. If not, I guess you'll just have something fun to do in between rounds. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, subscribe, comment. Good luck on the course. Have fun chucking plastic. Till next time.